from the station you count on for local news that matters. This is KARK 4 News at 6.
Right out of the gate, some breaking news to bring your way. A jury deliberating about the fate of a man facing murder charges in connection to a prank that ended up with a young girl being shot and killed comes to a decision.
KARK4's Drew Petrimo joining us now live at the Pulaski County Courthouse with the latest developments, Drew, that happened just moments ago.
Yeah, Shannon, Bob, just got word from the courtroom that Willie Noble has been found guilty of first-degree murder and 7 counts of terroristic threatening. The jury deliberating for just about an hour and a half before coming to that decision. Now, that decision comes after jurors heard some emotional closing arguments here at the end of the afternoon in which prosecutors painted a picture of an angry Willie Noble who fired purposely into a car filled with 7 teenagers. The defense told jurors that it was a tragedy what happened to Adrian Broadway, but that the first-degree murder charge was too steep because he did not mean to hurt anyone in that car. But earlier in the day, we did hear an interview conducted by detectives with Willie Noble the day after Broadway was killed on the vandalism of his car. He told officers at the time, quote, "It kind of pissed me off." He also said that he got his gun after the teens came by an initial time, and when they came back, he said he came out of the front door and I just started shooting. He went on to say, "I wasn't trying to hit nobody, I was just trying to scare them." Now, after the jury went back to begin deliberations, we were able to briefly catch up with Willie Noble's defense attorney, Ron Davis. Let's take a listen to what he had to say at that point.
Well, essentially, where the state charged this case doesn't leave many alternatives for the jury.
There he was trying to argue that because it was a first-degree murder charge, and in his argument, Mr. Noble did not kill Broadway on purpose, that they had no other choice but to acquit. Of course, that is not the way the jury ended up going. Again, the jury has convicted Willie Noble on a charge of first-degree murder and 7 counts of terroristic threatening. They will now begin discussions on what the sentence will be. We're going to head back up into the courtroom, and we'll let you know soon as we hear more on what happened. Guys, back to you.
All right, Drew, appreciate that.
In other news this evening, debate over whether to name a major thoroughfare after a civil rights leader cropping up again in a central Arkansas city.
And this time around, we're talking about the city of Arkadelphia in Clark County, where community members want to rename Pine Street in honor of civil rights leader Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
It is something that's come up multiple times, but hasn't quite made it past the city council. KARK4's Josh Berry back from Arkadelphia with more. Where we stand, Josh?
Well, Bob, this goes back to 2004 when the city dedicated a bridge in Martin Luther King Jr.'s honor, but the NAACP there in Arkadelphia said that wasn't what their community wanted. They wanted Pine Street. The city offered to change 10th Street and/or their community center 2 years ago. That didn't work either. Well, last night, the city board decided to put it to a vote once again.
Nearly 5 miles of pavement, stretching west to east, ending on different ends of the city.
Pine Street is the heart of Arkadelphia.
And it has found itself dividing different ends of what some call a very black and white debate.
Racism is still alive and well in Arkadelphia, Arkansas.
This is an issue of racism.
Without a shadow of doubt.
For more than a decade now, the NAACP here has pushed to rename Pine Street, calling it Dr. Martin Luther King Boulevard instead. The fight started back in 2004 when Henry Wilson, the president, and his group first asked for the change.
A lot of the property was owned by people of color.
But nothing definitive ever happened besides the city renaming the Pine Street Bridge. The NAACP suggests renaming Pine Street after MLK would honor African-American history and heritage here.
12 years later, still fighting for the same thing.
But Tuesday night, the city board of directors unanimously decided to vote on the issue at its next meeting.
It's a great city. I hate that it's being torn apart.
City board director Dr. Scott Bird will help head up a committee to discuss the potential change. He's a dentist in town, not on Pine Street, but does recognize that a street name change would have a financial impact.
There's signage, there's letterhead.
All things that will be discussed, but Wilson feels it's just gray area in what he calls a very white and black debate.
At what point do you guys say, okay, Pine Street isn't going to be changed?
That'll never happen in my lifetime.
Now, race relations on a national scale did come up a few times today, and whether the city wants to avoid something like we've seen in other communities. Now, Dr. Bird told me he's not acting out of fear that something will happen here. There might be a change, and he told me it's to make things better in their community. Now, Wilson did tell me that come February of next year, the African American community will be doing one of two things depending on the decision this month. They'll either be celebrating the name change or demonstrating for it. Back to you.
All right, Josh, thanks very much. A Hot Springs man in jail on $1 million bond accused of abusing a 3-month-old child so badly bones were broken. James Page of the Garland County Detention Center facing domestic battery charges. The 3-month-old is at Arkansas Children's Hospital recovering. Police say hospital officials called them after noticing the infant's multiple injuries, including burns, a broken collarbone, rib fractures, and multiple bruises. Hot Springs police arrested Page on Tuesday.
A judge will decide tomorrow whether to release 911 calls from when an infant was left in a hot car in July. Those calls are at the center of a lawsuit against the Hot Springs Police Department. One call was made by the child's father, Judge Wade Naramore. Prosecutors haven't filed any criminal charges in the death. Little Rock attorney Matt Campbell, though, says that 911 calls aren't investigative in nature and should be released.
Northwest Arkansas police are looking for a woman who skipped out on a taxi bill and also skipped out on her court appearance. Johnson police are looking for Joe Jackson for failing to appear in court. According to police, last month she used a taxi to travel to a hotel but did not have any money to pay the driver and was issued a citation to appear. If you think you've seen her, you're being urged to contact authorities.
And new tonight, we now have the 911 calls from the plane crash in Fayetteville involving a former Walmart CEO.
It's at the south end of the Fayetteville High School. I believe it's in the road. South end of Fayetteville High School on MLK.
Okay.
And I believe it's right there in the road.
What kind of plane is it? SR-22. SR-22. Do you know how many people are in it?
It's a small airplane, so two to three people.
A lot of calls coming in there. That plane crash landed safely, deploying a parachute. The 3 people on board had just minor injuries, including former Walmart CEO Bill Simon and a truck driver whose truck was actually clipped during that landing. Greg Reed, a flight instructor out of Fort Smith, says the parachute system on the Sirius SR-22 is specifically designed to slow down fast-moving small planes.
The parachute system is, as far as I know, probably one of the best things that ever happened to aviation. It's actually saved a lot of lives.
Experts say the parachute system consists of a ballistic rocket-fired parachute that must be deployed at least 500 feet above ground.
KARK is working for you to take a look at the rules in place to ensure foster children are safe at emergency shelters. This continues our investigation from July, where we found a foster emergency shelter under investigation had made dozens of calls to law enforcement without reporting any of the incidents to the Department of Human Services.
You've done a really good job at pulling some things. So I think those are things that we would like to do a lot more follow-up on in the future.
Tonight at 10 o'clock, KARK4's Marcy Manley takes a look at calls made to law enforcement from these shelters across the state and what changes DHS is looking to make when it comes to what incidents get reported behind closed doors.
And next at 6, a story that we need your help to solve.
She told me she was 5'7", 5'8", blue eyes, freckles, so a little bit of a physical description.
That woman there, adopted as an infant, now in Central Arkansas. The woman is trying to find the woman who gave her life, her birth mother.
And temperatures fairly mild across Arkansas today. Here in Little Rock, 71 and 61 the numbers for the day in the capital city. No rainfall in the rain gauge today, but we could see quite a bit of it tomorrow evening and tomorrow night, plus a threat of severe weather. We'll talk all about it in just a couple minutes.
Now from the station you count on for local news that matters. This is KARK 4 News at 6 in high definition with Bob Clausen, Ashley Katz, Chief Meteorologist Keith Monahan, and Aaron Peters with the Razorback Nation Report. KARK 4 News brought to you by Arkansas Heart Hospital.